You're listening to the AID Network.
Hello, friend. Glad you could join us for another sample from the Adventures in Design podcast from our Freedom Week series, where we did 10 interviews asking each professional 5 questions about freelance. Tally it all up. That's 50 questions all about freelance. Today, we take a different perspective from our good friend Mitch Putnam of Mondo Posters. Mitch has been a client for the past 10 years, hiring many talented illustrators, graphic designers, bringing them all into the world of Mondo. How could we have a week about freelance without talking to the client to get their perspective? Hear what Mitch looks for and where he finds freelancers to hire for Mondo. And when he does hire a freelancer, how to look out for the pitfalls of choking on the big dream gig that you've been trying to land from the last couple of years. To hear more of today's interview or to hear the rest of the series, visit our website at aid.network. It's Mitch Putnam on a sample of Adventures in Design podcast. What is it that you look for when you're hiring somebody? And I know that's kind of a big question, but over the years, as you said, this person's ready or this person is someone we need to work with. What are sort of the key factors that jump out to you so people can just kind of have in the back of their mindset, like, this is what I should be doing with my work to make sure clients are noticing me?
I mean, honestly, clear vision of a style is usually the thing we look the most for. Composition is probably the most like by the book thing that we look for, because if you're bad at type, we can handle your type in-house. If you don't know how to do SEPs yet, we can handle that in-house. Composition is probably the most academic rule that we look for the most. But I mean, the biggest thing is having a clear vision in your own style. The thing that we're almost never going to do is go to somebody because their work is like another artist and almost as good. That's just not really something we do. We're much more likely to reach out to an artist that has a unique style and has figured out their own style than, again, trying to chase a house style that's going to probably be a little bit behind the masters of it already.
You know how on the poster countdown, you and I will be like, whoa, this is different for this artist. And we'll maybe be familiar with them, or we'll go over at their website and be like, oh, this person's definitely turned a corner. Like, remember in the last one, we talked about the guy that did the Ween poster, and it seemed like he'd been on a good roll for the last 3 or 4 projects. When you go to hire somebody, how much of their past work history do you look at? Because you want to kind of not be like, oh, did they get lucky on the last one, or are they consistently getting lucky?
I mean, this is something we talk about a lot, because Rob and I will get into arguments quite often about, you know, whether somebody having done one good poster 8 posters ago still warrants them, you know, being on a roll or whatever. Generally, it's kind of a momentum thing. So if somebody's starting to put it together, you can usually tell.
Yeah.
If they've put together 3 or 4 good pieces that are probably in a different style than their last ones and that are starting to come together. I don't know what it is, but you can just kind of tell. It's probably a lot like when you can tell that a band is getting better at songwriting or, you know, any other art form. And generally, I mean, the nice thing is, because we live in a world in which there's a ton of internet presence and there's a ton of clients hiring people for artwork, usually we can kind of sit back until somebody's work is looking really good and go to them then, because we're lucky enough to be in this position where people want to work with Mondo. And so even if we're kind of late to the party, usually people are excited to work with us. So that's a really nice position to be in.
When you're finding these artists and you're catching their journey and waiting for the artwork to mature, to give people listening sort of insight where clients look, is this all Instagram? I mean, where are you finding people at these days?
Kind of everywhere. Instagram, people emailing me to be on OMG posters happens a lot. People just doing other poster work happens a lot. I mean, I look through design and illustration annuals. I look at Reddit. I've looked at Tumblr. It just kind of all comes in different ways. And again, sometimes these days, I'm not ashamed to admit, sometimes someone has done a great poster for another company, and then we say, wow, this poster is really good. We should be working with this person. Honestly, I know it's a shitty answer, but kind of every way possible.
But what that says to me is, for the person listening at home, like whatever industry you want to get into, it obviously doesn't have to be movie posters, but if you can get your work out in as many places as possible. And also the number one thing I'm hearing from you is you like to hire people that are doing work that looks like what you want to hire them for. So therefore, if you really wanted to get into apparel or you wanted to get into streetwear, somewhere in your world, whether it's you hiring yourself, you should be doing that look right now, because nobody's going to be able to jump from, oh, this guy's a pretty good UX designer, I wonder if he could make a fantastic pair of running shoes. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. And at this point, probably a third or so of our artists that we work with had never done a movie poster before we started working with them. And a lot of the styles that we work with never set out to do that. So if you look at somebody like Nicholas Delort, who's just like an old school scratchboard artist, definitely on like a gallery fine art level, he certainly didn't develop his style to make movie posters. We saw his work. We saw how epic and well done it was, and then we tried to shape a vision of movie posters around that.
That's fantastic, because it goes to show that you guys have a vision and that people can just focus on making what it is that they make. And somebody that has vision or is a fan will like, hey, I know this sounds kind of crazy, but we'd love to see you design a sneaker box for us. And you're like, yeah, but I do architectural renderings. But like, no, we thought it would be cool to make a San Francisco shoe box. We want you to be the guy to do it. Done. All right, so let me ask you this. This is something we've talked about time and time again on the Poster Countdown, but I think that it's something that's worthy of revisiting. You always say that you discover an artist who you're really excited because they're doing something new. They've got a unique style, a unique voice that you think, oh, this is something we haven't done before. But then you hire them and they choke because they're like, oh my God, I just got hired to work with Mondo, who's, a leader in this part of the design industry and in a very well-respected company. And they choke, and then they do something that looks like things you've already produced before.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the choke for a little bit, because I think Mondo's a really good example of this, but I see people do this if they get hired by Disney or Nike. Like whenever there's a milestone client and they hire you, there is something in all of us creatives to sort of choke and be like, oh, this is what a Nike project looks like. But they hired you because of your unique voice, not to rehash the greatest hits.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it happens less these days just because we have made an active choice to release a lot of different looks all the time. So, the more we work with someone like We Buy Your Kids, or the more we work with artists that have sort of an avant-garde look, the less people feel like we have a house style that they need to stick to. And I mean, I don't know if the audience knows this story or not, but when you and I first started talking, I came to you to do a job that looked like your work, and you actually pitched a Star Trek project where you were like drawing people kind of Tyler Stout style. And that's a very common occurrence, is like, well, Mondo people want drawings of people's faces and this and that. And even if that's not their strength, people kind of try that out. And in most cases go back to their usual style.
It's interesting as a creative that you can choke a little bit, and you can, because I think a lot of us, you lose self-confidence, but your job isn't to be the self-confidence booster. Your job is to identify what people are doing successful and then get them to embrace it.
Yeah. I mean, when we come to you with a vision of a title pairing, we're not looking for you to do something you're not doing, or else we wouldn't have even come up with that title in the first place. The way that we, decided on, oh, this movie would work with this person, is probably identifying a very few number of pieces in your portfolio that you've been doing lately and thinking, wow, this movie would look really cool in this style. So trusting yourself and trusting your own style is kind of a big thing, because very, very, very rarely, if ever, do we go to somebody with the idea of like, okay, we don't really like this person's work right now, but we think that if we keep working with them into a different style, they'll be able to make it work. That it doesn't really work that way. Most of it's, we already like what you're doing. We've watched you for quite a while. We think you're ready. Because the Mondo stage is fucking harsh. And I get a lot of artists that are upset that they're not doing Mondo work yet, pretty early in their career. And it's kind of something you don't want really early in your career, because if you turn in something that's not your best work and we put it out, it's a fucking harsh stage. And like, people are going to rip it apart and people are going to talk shit. And so you kind of want to be ready when you get to that stage.
Yeah, I've seen people from the Mondo world that are very well-respected Illustrator printmakers, and people are just relentless on how bad they drew this one female character. And I just think, man, if that was your entry point, you'd be like, fuck it, I'm packing my bags and going home. I didn't ask for this.
Exactly. And so we try to be mindful of that too. And I know that there's a lot of, people that are upset that they don't get jobs. But the thing is, like, just the same exact way that it would be horrible for like your local garage band to open for Jack White on a tour, it's not a good idea to be on the large exposure level with your art until you're ready, in my opinion.
Let's backtrack just a little bit. When a freelancer gets hired to do something for a dream client and they can maybe feel the choke coming on, or they just want to rest assured they know they got hired, how would you feel like if you called me up and said, hey, I want to hire you, and I wrote you back and like, oh, that would be great. Could you just point out a couple of pieces of mine that you vibe on, so I kind of can set up a style guide and know what from you your expectations are?
Yeah, and I mean, we've done that before in the past. Kind of the way that we start with most artists if we don't know them at all, which at this point, a lot of the times we start talking to artists, we know them through somebody, or we know them because of a project in the past. But if it's a completely cold call, generally I'll reach out, we say what we like about their work, and then usually what I'll do is say, if they say they're interested, I'll say, can you send me a dream list of properties?
Oh, wow.
And so they'll send a dream list of properties. We'll look through them, see if we have any matchups as far as something we need right now. And if not, we're able to see, okay, here's the kind of movies this person likes. Mm-hmm. We have this that's similar, even if it's not on their list. Because that's the other problem. If you go to an artist, you don't know if they're into video games. You don't know if they're into horror, if they're averse to horror. You don't really know until you get an idea of, okay, if I could pick my own job, it would be this.
Thank you for listening. To hear more from Freedom Week, make sure you visit aidpodcast.com to hear all 5 episodes, 10 guests, 50 questions answered about freelance. That and 800 other episodes are available at aidpodcast.com. Thank you for listening.